Hi everybody, this is Sheila Smith, Algebori again. Today I want to talk to you about some technology-rich lessons that I've created to help Ms. Cox's ESL class at her school. Now, for these lessons that I've designed, I focused on the oral language lessons that she has in her room. Now, the main problem that Ms. Cox faces is time. She's got 11 time periods per day where she has students for 30 minutes. During these 30-minute time blocks, she typically sees 4 to 10 students. However, she's able to break those students into smaller groups that are able to rotate between 3 teachers. So, during this time period of 30 minutes, she's got one teacher focused on language acquisition and phonics, another teacher working with students on their reading and comprehension based off of a assigned book for the unit. Typically during reading and comprehension, she starts to try to incorporate writing, and then you've got your oral language. Now, the problem, besides time, is that they have about 70 students rotating through their classroom on any given day. Now, several grades already are doing research materials and they use the devices in the classroom. So these devices are shared between about 70 students. Now, I know not everybody is going to use the devices. Not kindergarten maybe, but still. Everybody has to share the same devices. So for these lessons, I focused on how I could design technology-rich lessons for Ms. Cox to use with her 3rd and 4th grade students. You'll see in this graph that I have listed the number of students during the time slots for the grades 3rd and 4th grade. 3rd grade has 2 time periods every day that they're able to come to ESL. The first group is broken into 3 different groups, and even on the second one, there may only be 2 groups, but students are still able to rotate through those 3 learning centers. And I'm going to explain to you a little bit later how that works if there's only 2 groups or 2 teachers in the room during the time. But for this lesson, we're going to focus on 4th grade. You'll see on here that for this 4th grade group, or for this lesson, we focused on the 4th graders who were working on English language arts, their oral language, as well as the background knowledge associated with life science skills. The 4th graders at this school have 3 time periods. During this first time period, you only see 1 group of 4th graders. That's because this is the 1-hour time slot that Ms. Cox has 3 grades. Yep, you heard me right. 3 grades of students who are new to the country. For the 4th graders, there's just the 1 group, just the 2 students. However, one of them comes back later to be a part of that second group. Or I guess it's the 3rd group, technically. Alright. Now for these lessons, I focused on technology resources that the students could use with the devices they have access to in the classroom. While there are other technology resources in the room, the iPads and or the Chromebooks are devices that students are constantly having access to or being able to work with. Now for this lesson, I wanted to look at how students could use There are resources such as Quizlet, WebQuest, and Padlet. But let's look at this WebQuest real fast. The WebQuest was designed to support all 3 teachers. The WebQuest for this class contains the materials and supporting supplemental stuff for all 3 teachers. So if one teacher has to be out or happens to get pulled for a meeting, which sometimes happens, we know, or even has to be gone for testing, the other teachers in the room can direct students to WebQuest, look at the section they're supposed to be working on that day, see what they've completed. If they've already completed everything, then there's different activities and things students can still be doing associated with the overall lesson. But let's get back to the oral language lessons. For this lesson plan, the main activities that they're doing are students are going to be focusing on learning the vocabulary terms, being able to use those terms in context using a worksheet. The second day they're with this teacher, they'll review those vocabulary terms and then get into the building the background knowledge of life science that will be associated with the book they're focused on. For this unit, the students are reading the story Survival in the Great Sandy Desert. So they're going to have to know how to pull context clues or information from the surrounding words in a passage to be able to find the meaning of new words. As they continue on, if students aren't able to have finished in other sections besides oral language, the oral language teacher will have opportunities for them to begin researching for their final informative essay that they'll do at the end of the text. Now, I told you a little bit about Quizlet. This is a little peek into what Quizlet is all about. That first day, students can use flashcards or maybe the learning option. There's many different study options that are provided for students on Quizlet. You'll see over in this corner, I've got it set up showing you the 4th grade lists that are provided. Since we do have the students that are new to the country, we've designed specific Quizlet applications and vocabulary sets for them. This is a fun feature that you can do for your students because then you're being able to modify or accommodate certain needs, such as this one is word-to-word translation. Now, you'll have noticed on this last screen that there were other options available. You've got the test mode and you've got match. These I've looked at as ways the teacher is able to assess the student's knowledge and vocabulary comprehension. The student can either set it up as the match competition, where the students are head-to-head competing to see how quickly they can match the terms to the definitions, or she can give them a formal assessment with different varieties, such as you see right here. We've got multiple choice, matching, written questions, and true or false. Students would be able to screenshot their final grade and submit it to the teacher however the teacher wants. I told you a little bit about the WebQuest. Here you'll see the introduction page that pretty much just tells students more about what story they're going to be covering, how we're talking about a desert habitat, things like that. At the bottom, you'll see a link to the website that all students get their material from. This is also just additional supplemental work and activities to enhance the students' learning and background knowledge. Here's a view of what the oral language section appears on the web quest for the class. Students can come through there and say, oh, well, we already did page 8. I haven't done page 13 yet, but I don't feel sure about that. And on their own, just using their website, they're able to find their own assistance, their own materials to get support without always going, teacher, I don't understand, and interrupting other groups. Now, the last thing we talked about was how those last days students are beginning their research for their final informative essay. Well, you can't write an essay unless you've done your research. So, while waiting for other small groups to finish, or once everyone has finished, students will begin their researching of 2 plants and 2 animals that survive in the Great Sandy Desert. In their writing, they're going to be informing how these plants and animals are able to survive in the Great Sandy Desert. What adaptations, getting in those vocabulary words, do the students need, or do the plants and animals need to be able to survive? Now, by having the students use this Padlet application or website, it is pretty much a group classroom messaging board where teachers and students can post and store their resources and online reference materials in a secure location. We've got multiple students using the same devices over a time period between just the small groups, let alone when you've got multiple grades using the same devices. So Padlet is a great way for them to keep up with their resources, and even if they find new ones, they can post them to this class group and everyone can say, oh, that's a great resource. Now, you can't have a lesson without talking about assessments. But first, we've kind of already talked about the assessments of how teachers will assess their learning. But what are we hoping the students will learn from this? We're hoping to build their life science skills. We're looking at the Common Core life science skills for 4th grade. We are talking about ESL, so we have to look at their English language proficiency standards. Can they speak and write at grade appropriate topics? Can they conduct research and evaluate and communicate their findings? Can they determine the meaning of words and phrases in oral presentations and literary and informational text? And since we're talking about technology, we have to squeeze in some of those technology standards. Students are using technology for feedback to inform and improve their practices, as well as to demonstrate what they've learned. And then students just have to have a fundamental understanding of how technology works. How do we pick it? How do we use it? What do we do when there's a problem with just the technology that we already have? Now, in our vocabulary assessment, whether it's the test or the matching, students are using the technology to get the feedback on what they learned. Are they right? Do they know their words? For the writing assessment, students are facing a lot of those other standards.